The second planned wave included 171 aircraft, 54 B-5Ns, 81 D-3As, and 36 A-6Ms, led by Lieutenant Commander Shigekazu Shimazaki. The second wave was split into 3 groups, with one assigned to strike Kainohi and the others targeting Pearl Harbor directly. The sections converged on the attack zone nearly simultaneously from multiple directions. The disarmed target ship Utah was hit twice by torpedoes. Severe flooding quickly began to overwhelm Utah, causing her to list to port and settle by the stern. As the crew began abandoning ship, Chief Watertender Peter Tomich remained below decks, ensuring as many men as possible could escape and keeping vital machinery running. He was awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously for his bravery. At 8:12 a.m., Utah rolled onto her side while surviving crew members swam to shore. Shortly after, Commander Solomon Isquith, the senior officer on board, heard knocking from trapped men and called for volunteers to retrieve a cutting torch from the damaged cruiser Raleigh, which had been hit by one torpedo herself. They managed to rescue 4 men. In all, 58 officers and men were lost. While the Japanese focused on battleships, they did not overlook other targets. The light cruiser Helena was torpedoed, and the blast shock capsized the nearby mine layer Oglala. 2 destroyers in dry dock, Cassin and Downs, were destroyed when bombs hit their fuel bunkers. The leaking fuel ignited. Attempts to flood the dry dock to fight the fire caused the burning oil to rise, and both ships were burned out. Oklahoma was moored at Berth Fox 5 on Battleship Row, positioned outboard alongside the battleship Maryland. Planes from the Japanese carriers Akagi and Kaga immediately targeted her, and she was hit by 3 torpedoes. The first 2 struck seconds apart around 7:50 a.m. or 7:53 a.m., hitting amidships about 20 feet below the waterline between the smokestack and mainmast. These blasts tore away a large section of her anti-torpedo bulge, spilling oil from nearby fuel bunkers, though neither torpedo penetrated the hull. Approximately 80 men rushed to man the anti-aircraft guns on deck, only to find the firing locks were still stored in the armory. Most men took up battle stations below the waterline or sought refuge on the 3rd deck, as was protocol during an air attack. The 3rd torpedo hit around 8 a.m. near frame 65, close to the previous impacts, piercing the hull, destroying nearby fuel bunkers, and damaging access trunks to the 2 forward boiler rooms, the transverse bulkhead to the aft boiler room, and the longitudinal bulkhead of the 2 forward firing rooms. As Oklahoma began to capsize to port, 2 additional torpedoes struck, and her crew was strafed as they attempted to abandon ship. Within 12 minutes, she rolled until her masts hit the harbor bottom, leaving her starboard side above water and part of her keel exposed. The ship is believed to have sustained up to 8 torpedo hits in total. Many of her crew continued the fight, boarding Maryland to help operate her anti-aircraft guns. In all, 429 officers and crew members were killed or went missing, including Father Aloysius Schmidt, the first American chaplain killed in World War II. 32 others were wounded, with many trapped inside the overturned hull. West Virginia was moored alongside Tennessee when Japanese aircraft arrived over the harbor just before 8 a.m., initiating the surprise attack. Torpedo bombers struck her port side with 7 Type 91 torpedoes, while bombers dropped 2 converted 16-inch armor-piercing shells. The first bomb hit the port side, piercing the superstructure deck and causing severe damage to the casemates below, where secondary explosions from stored ammunition ignited serious fires that spread to the galley deck. The second bomb hit the rear superfiring turret's roof, penetrating but failing to detonate. However, it damaged one of the turret's guns, destroyed the OS-2U Kingfisher floatplane on the turret catapult, and knocked another aircraft down to the main deck. This aircraft spilled gasoline, which then ignited on the deck. One of the torpedoes struck aft, disabling the rudder, while at least 3 hit below the belt armor, and another hit the belt itself, damaging 7 armor plates. These impacts created 2 large breaches in the hull from frames 43 to 52 and 62 to 97. At least 1 torpedo passing through after the ship began listing detonated on the second armor deck. The torpedoes inflicted severe damage, but quick damage control led by Lieutenant Claude V. Ricketts, the assistant fire control officer, prevented capsizing. Captain Mervyn S. Bennion was mortally wounded by bomb fragments from a strike on Tennessee. For remaining aboard to defend the ship until his death, he was awarded the Medal of Honor. After Bennion was injured, he was carried from the bridge by crew members, including mess attendant Doris Miller, who later manned an anti-aircraft gun on the conning tower despite no prior training. Miller received a Navy Cross for his actions. As West Virginia filled with water and sank evenly, the crew was evacuated, though some volunteered to return and fight the fires spreading across the deck. Fuel oil leaking from the destroyed Arizona ignited, engulfing West Virginia in flames, fed by her own leaking fuel as well. The fires were finally extinguished the next day. In total, 106 men lost their lives in the attack. The USS California was docked at the southern end of Battleship Row in Pearl Harbor, with only 2 5-inch guns and 2 50-caliber machine guns armed. As the Japanese assault began, Lieutenant Commander Marion Little, the senior officer on board, ordered general quarters. The California engaged enemy aircraft, but the crew quickly depleted their ready ammunition. At 8:05 a.m., 2 torpedoes struck, causing severe flooding as water spread quickly through open doors and portholes, which had been unsealed for inspection. Despite efforts to correct the list, ruptured fuel tanks allowed seawater to contaminate the fuel, cutting power and complicating response efforts. Between 8:15 and 9:15 a.m., Japanese dive bombers continued their assault on the ship. At 8:45 a.m., Commander Earl Stone assumed command, but soon afterward, a bomb, likely a modified 16-inch armor-piercing shell, hit the forward starboard side, triggering a powerful explosion that killed around 50 crew members and sparked intense fires. Although the crew managed to restart 4 boilers, thick smoke from the spreading blaze forced an evacuation of the forward engine room by 10 a.m., halting all pumping operations. Captain Joel Bunkley and Vice Admiral William S. Pye returned to the ship to direct firefighting efforts, yet flooding continued despite assistance from nearby vessels. Over the next 3 days, California gradually sank into the harbor mud, sustaining heavy damage. The attack on California led to 104 crew deaths and 61 injuries. Just after 8 a.m., 10 Nakajima B-5N2 Kate torpedo bombers, 5 each from the carriers Kaga and Hiryu, targeted Arizona. Each aircraft carried modified 16.1-inch armor-piercing shells turned into 1,757-pound bombs. Flying at an estimated altitude of 9,800 feet, Kaga's bombers struck from amidships to the stern, followed closely by Hiryu's bombers, which focused their attack on the bow area. The aircraft achieved 4 direct hits and 3 near misses on and around Arizona. A near miss off the port bow likely led some observers to mistakenly believe the ship had been torpedoed, although no torpedo damage was confirmed. The furthest aft bomb deflected off turret 4, piercing the deck and detonating in the captain's pantry, sparking a small fire. The next bomb hit closer forward, near the port edge by the mainmast, likely detonating near the anti-torpedo bulkhead. Another bomb impacted near the port side rear 5-inch anti-aircraft gun. At 8:06 a.m., the final bomb struck near turret 2, likely piercing the armored deck close to the forward magazines. Though much of the structure is now gone, the impact was unmistakable. Around 7 seconds later, the forward magazines erupted in a massive explosion, venting through the ship's sides and destroying much of its forward interior. This blast caused the forward turrets and conning tower to collapse downward by 25 to 30 feet. while the foremast and funnel crumpled forward, effectively tearing the ship in two. The explosion ignited intense fires that burned for 2 days, scattering debris over Ford Island. The blast even extinguished fires on the nearby repair ship Vestal, which was moored alongside. In total, 1,177 of the 1,512 crew on board perished in the bombing and ensuing explosion, roughly half of the lives lost in the attack. USS Nevada was the only battleship free to maneuver independently, not being moored alongside another vessel. Its commanding officer, Francis W. Scanland, was ashore when the attack began, so Ensign Joe Taussig assumed command on deck. Earlier, Taussig had ordered a second boiler to be lit, allowing the ship to quickly gain power and respond. As Japanese planes approached, Nevada's gunners engaged, downing several attackers, though Taussig suffered a leg injury. At 8:10 a.m., a torpedo struck Nevada, causing heavy flooding, but the crew stabilized her by counterflooding. By 8:40 a.m., Nevada was moving, retaliating against enemy planes. During the second wave of attacks, Nevada became a primary target for Japanese dive bombers intent on sinking her in the channel to block harbor access. However, the narrow channel prevented this tactic from succeeding, though Nevada took 5 bomb hits. One bomb exploded near the galley, while others hit vital spots around the stack, number 1 turret, and the forecastle. Fires ignited around turret 1, fueled by gasoline fumes from a ruptured tank, but disaster was averted since the ship's main magazines were empty. Days before, Nevada had offloaded old ammunition in preparation for new, heavier shells, preventing a devastating explosion. As Nevada took on increasing damage, orders directed her to head to Ford Island's western side to avoid sinking in deeper water. Assisted by the nearby ships Hoga and Avocet, she was grounded at Hospital Point around 10:30 a.m., yet continued firing and brought down 3 additional planes. Despite these efforts, fires and flooding intensified within her hull, exacerbated by structural weaknesses and insufficient watertight compartments. Water infiltrated ventilation systems, spreading into critical sections like the dynamo and boiler rooms, making control increasingly difficult. By the attack's end, Nevada had lost 60 crew members, with 109 others wounded. Battleships USS Maryland and USS Tennessee were hit by 2 modified 16-inch shells, but none inflicted serious damage to the ships. USS Pennsylvania was in dry dock undergoing maintenance, accompanied by the destroyers Cassin and Downs. When the Japanese attack began, Pennsylvania's crew quickly manned battle stations and opened fire with anti-aircraft guns around 8:02 a.m. However, their initial efforts were hindered by incorrect fuse settings, which caused the shells to detonate prematurely. Japanese aircraft targeted the dry dock, but failed to flood it, instead strafing Pennsylvania. Bombers later hit Downs in Pennsylvania, with 1 bomb penetrating Pennsylvania's deck and exploding in casemate number 9. By 9:20 a.m., fires from bomb hits engulfed the destroyers and spread to Pennsylvania. To contain the damage, the dry dock was flooded, but explosions aboard Downs scattered debris, including a torpedo tube, onto Pennsylvania's deck. Despite the chaos, Pennsylvania's crew fought fires, ferried ammunition from West Lock, and began addressing the bomb damage by the afternoon. The attack left Pennsylvania with 15 crew members killed, including her executive officer, 14 missing, and 38 wounded, but the ship remained operational and was later refloated with relatively minor damage. Cassin slipped from her keel blocks and rolled against Downs. The light cruiser Honolulu sustained damage but stayed operational. The repair ship Vestal, moored beside Arizona, was heavily damaged and later beached. The seaplane tender Curtis also took damage. The destroyer Shaw was severely hit when 2 bombs pierced her forward magazine. Out of 402 American aircraft stationed in Hawaii, 188 were destroyed and 159 damaged, with 155 of these on the ground. Almost none were ready for immediate defense. During the attack, 8 Army Air Forces pilots managed to get airborne, with 6 credited for downing at least 1 Japanese aircraft. Of 33 consolidated PBY Catalinas in Hawaii, 30 were destroyed, while 3 on patrol at the time returned undamaged. Additionally, friendly fire downed some American planes, including 4 from an incoming flight from Enterprise. During the attack, 9 civilian aircraft were flying near Pearl Harbor, 3 of which were shot down. In the attack, 55 Japanese airmen and 9 submariners lost their lives, with 1, Kazuo Sakamaki, captured. Out of Japan's 414 available planes, 350 participated in the raid. 29 were lost, 9 in the first wave and 20 in the second, while another 74 were damaged by ground-based anti-aircraft fire. 90 minutes after it began, the attack ended. A total of 2,008 sailors were killed and 710 wounded. 218 soldiers and airmen were killed and 364 wounded. 109 Marines lost their lives and 69 were wounded. 68 civilians were killed and 35 wounded. In total, 2,403 Americans were killed and 1,178 wounded. 21 American ships were damaged or lost in the attack, but all except 3 were eventually repaired and returned to service. The damage actually could have been worse, as 60% of the bombs dropped by the Japanese were duds.